Everybody. So today I want to give you a little lesson, I guess you could say, on our worm factory here. This is full disclosure, this worm factory does not belong to me. It belongs to the school that I work at. But it's super cool, and I thought you guys would like to see it because it goes perfectly with gardening. So before I go any further, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Liz Lewis, and I am a teacher. I live way up in northern Maine in Zone 4, and all that really means is that I have a really, really short growing season. And so I record videos on this channel to communicate my ideas about how I can really, really stretch out my growing season. And if you could see my house right now in my bedroom, I mean, it is just plants and seedling central. But this is something that I think is really, really cool. This is a worm factory. And this is something that I'm doing with my kindergartners in school. We've been raising these wigglers for several weeks now. The whole worm idea started last year with my last year's class, and then the school shut down because of COVID, and I had to take all the worms home with me, and I didn't really know what to do with them. So I guess when you don't know how to take care of something or what to do with something, you have to learn and teach yourself. And so I did, and then the worms that I had last year, which I only had, I don't know, probably 25 or 30 worms last year that I brought home with me when the school shut down, turned into hundreds of worms over the year. And I kept them alive, I kept them fed, I kept them doing their thing, nice and happy. And then this year, obviously when spring is approaching too, it's perfect time to start teaching kids about plants and seeds and pollinators and worms and all of that, so it just all goes together perfectly. I ordered more worms from the science company that deals with the school, and then we got this, and I was like, oh, we need even more worms, so we got 1,000 more worms in the mail, and now we have an actual worm factory. So I'm going to show you what this worm factory does, and if you have a kindergartner that's in my class, pause this video right now and let them tell you what it does, because they're pretty awesome. So the bottom of this, it's just on some 4 legs, and this is a tray, comes up, and the bottom there, it's just kind of a drainage system. There's a spigot here in case if we water it or whatever, which I don't ever really have to water it because the worms and the soil gets most of the water that it needs from the food that we put in. So I've never actually had to water it. I just spray this newspaper every once in a while. But if we do get too much water in there, there's a spigot down here that I can turn and drain water out. Now this tray, I'm not gonna tip it because it's full of thousands of worms and soil and rotting food and everything, which it doesn't smell at all. There's absolutely no aroma to this at all. There's not even any bugs. My plants actually stink worse than this thing. Maybe if I tip it a little bit, you might be able to see. No, I don't want to tip it too much. Well, on the bottom of this, it's a graded bottom. There's holes, okay? And that's so the worms can travel through. They do come down here, and then there's a worm ladder for them to climb back up and back into the feeder tray. And so what happens is we started this just about 4 weeks ago. We started this worm factory, and we just put some coconut husk, some damp newspaper, some rock dust, because worms don't have teeth, so they need the rock dust for grit. It helps break down the food. It acts like their teeth in their digestive system. Rocks and grit and things like coffee grounds and stuff. And that was it. Oh, and shredded paper. And then we put in all the worms that we had, and then the worms that came in the mail. You cannot use night crawlers or regular earthworms for this. Night crawlers would not survive very well in a system like this. They like to burrow down deep, 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 where it's cold and dark and damp all the time. But the red wigglers, which is what's in here, I'll show you one. They all ran away on me real quick. The red wigglers that are in here, they're more like surface worms. If you dig in the ground, and they are native around here. At least I've been told that they are. They're not deep down, but they're not very big either. So let me see if I can find one. Yeah. Well, that's just a baby. Hold on, I can find a bigger one than that. That's just a baby. Here we go. So let me wash it off so I don't get my camera system all wet here. You're gonna be like that. Okay. So, I mean, they're not very big. They're pretty cute. You can see right through their skin. Kids absolutely, oh, I just dropped one. Kids absolutely love to check these out under the microscope because you can see through their skin and you can see like the food traveling through. And you can see the clitellum, and when they get really aggravated, they jump around all over the place and they do all kinds of flippy flops, and they're super cute. Get up here. Get up here. Stop trying to run away from me. I'm not going to hurt you. I feed you. Get up here. Oh, you slippery little sucker. Okay. So, that is a red wiggler. It is different from a night crawler for sure. Lift this up a little bit. All right, back in the box you go. Anyway, so I'm going to show you I'm going to try to find them, because what we do is we have a feeding pattern. Oh, look at my isopods. We also studied isopods in school, because believe it or not, isopods and worms, and they all have a lot of things in common with each other. And so we studied isopods, and there they are. They're just roly-poly bags, pill bags. But okay, nonsense. Get in there. Get in there. Get in there. You know I'm... Okay. Put that there. So, where was I? The isopods. Okay, so we have like a feeding pattern for the worms. Okay, we don't always feed them in the same place. I'm going to give you a view of what this looks like real quick. Okay, don't mind the garbage bag back there, please. Okay, so you can see that there's newspaper in there, both shredded and rolled up, because they like to crawl inside the newspaper. And so we feed them every single day. And how we do that is we collect scraps from our lunches that the kids don't eat or don't finish. We collect it, we keep it refrigerated. You don't necessarily have to keep it refrigerated, but I don't want that smell necessarily in my classroom. So we keep it refrigerated. And on Fridays, the kids get to spend the afternoon before going home for about a half an hour chopping up all the food into really small, like this is a piece of pea pod, really small itty bitty pieces. Sometimes we have grapes, sometimes we have tomatoes, sometimes we have strawberries. There's always some kids that just don't eat any of that stuff. So we save it so we can feed it to our worms. These worms eat a little more than a half a pound of food a day. So we had to kind of collect a little at first, and then we got the worms and we had a good start. And so every Friday afternoon we chop, 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 and that's their food for most of the following week. The older the food, the better the worms like it. And so when it's feeding day, we will, well, I have a pencil in here. The pencil in here marks the last place that we put food into the worm factory. So I know that if I put the food here, I'm always going in a clockwise direction. That 4 weeks ago was the last time I put food in this corner here, okay? And I don't know if you're seeing that, it might be backwards. So there's not going to be a lot of worms in this corner at all. All right? Because what we want to happen is we want the worms to travel around the factory, okay? We want them traveling around. So I feed them every day. And so now I'm thinking most of the worms are probably right here. This is where the pencil is. That's where I fed them yesterday. Yeah, I just saw 2 worms just down. And there's going to be a bunch of worms right here too, still breaking down the food from the previous meal. There's hardly any worms here, which is where I was just digging, looking for a couple worms. I only found like 2 or 3, right? If I would have dug over here, I would have found handfuls. And it's kind of gross. It kind of, people don't necessarily like to see it. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have like a literal ball of 1,000 worms. Because they ball up within each other. That's how they mate, that's how they eat, that's how they maintain temperature, their correct body temperature, the whole 9 yards. So I'm going to show you that, and then I can show you how I feed them. And then I can show you how this will work in a system. So this is only about 4 weeks old. So let me see if I can do 2 things at one time. Oh, I'm gonna turn my light on too because the worms do not like the light. Obviously when they see the light they jump away. So I'm thinking probably most of the worms are gonna be in here. I might be wrong. Oh, there's a bunch. Can you see that? That's nothing though. That's nothing. They definitely must have, do you see that? I hope you can see that but that's nothing. They must be in here now. Let's look. Oh, the soil is moving. Oh gosh, they are loving all those people. Do you see them? I'm trying to find a big clump of them though, and it's really hard to do. Oh, here we go. They don't, can you see them? So imagine if you're 5 or 6 years old and you're doing this in school. I mean, the kids absolutely love this. And I could find more if I could use like 2 hands. Oh, I just found, like, of course, I just found a huge clump of them right here. But there's just thousands and thousands of worms in here. And they don't really mind being disturbed either. I can disturb them all I want. If I put like an apple or something in there, they would like eat all the flesh of the apple out and keep the skin, and then you pick up the skin and then the whole inside of where the flesh used to be would be where the worms now are. They like take habitat inside the skins of apples. It's so cool. I freaked out a lot of teachers. Teachers come into my room all the time and they're like, oh, you're doing the worm factory, I want to see. And then finally, you know, we find where all the worms are kind of clustered together, and all the teachers are like, oh, why? They're like, ooh, they don't expect it. So it's pretty cool. And the kids just laugh because they just think it's so funny. And the kids will just dig right in here with their hands and pick worms up and isopods up, and they just have such a great time learning about this, and they have a whole new respect for the importance of just living things in general. Everything from our isopods that are in here are in a perfect community with these worms breaking down food. That's what isopods do too. And you know, we learned about birds and we learned about fish. Both things eat worms a lot, you know, so it's a whole circle of life, nature. And they're learning about composting and how most of this black, right? I told you when we started this 4 weeks ago, We started it with coconut husk, shredded newspaper, a couple of sheets of newspaper like this, rock dust, and volcanic rock too. It's another thing to help keep it aerated in here. Pumice, it's called. And that's it. And then we just put in newspaper, shredded newspaper, and food every day for 4 weeks. So all of this black, this is all made from the worms. The worms are making all of this. And as you can see, it's almost full. So once, probably at the end of next week, at the end of next school week, after feeding them with the kids another few times, what we're gonna do is I have, I think 5 more of these feeder trays. And what you do, when this is all broken down pretty good, okay, we're gonna stop feeding the worms in this tray. We're gonna put a new tray, set it right on top. The trays, like I said in the beginning, have all of those little holes, tons and tons. The whole bottom is holes, so the worms can go in and out all they want. Okay? But I'm only gonna feed them in the new tray. So eventually, when they've completely broken down all the food that's in here and they start to get really annoyed that I'm not giving them any more food, they're gonna go up looking for new food and they will find it. And eventually all of the worms will naturally leave this tray and migrate up to the new tray where the new food is, yay, being found. And all that will be left on here is perfect, wonderful worm castings compost. You know, I'm teaching the kids about vermicomposting, right? Is that what it's called? Vermiculture? Vermiculture. And they love it. They get it. They're seeing it happen before their eyes. We check on these guys every single day. I'm sure because we're not in school this week, they're missing their worms, but you know, I'm taking good care of them because obviously I had to take them home with me. So now I'm going to feed them again. Even though they still have quite a bit of food over here, you know, it's a daily thing where I feed them every day to keep them moving around. All right? And they do have quite a bit of food over there, so I probably won't put too much. Sky, will you give me a tray of worm food down there so I can show them the worm food? Thank you. So all we do is I save these containers, you know that. I plant a lot of my seeds in these containers while I save them at school too to put the kids' scraps in. And I keep it in my little classroom refrigerator. And there is a beautiful display of the kids' chopping skills. Having kids chop things like this is so good for their fine motor. You know, just being able to hold it and focus. And don't worry, they use knives that are designed for kids, little kids. They're plastic. They don't have points, but they are a little sharp. I mean, they can cut. And I gave them lessons and safety guidelines, and if they don't follow the safety guidelines, they don't cut. I'll end up giving them like a little plastic butter knife instead. I mean, I haven't had to do that yet because they're taking this seriously. They want to make sure that their worms are getting fed and getting fed properly. And this looks like banana peel, pea pod, apples. I see some grapes in here, so they're gonna love it. And because these foods are so full of water, I don't have to add water to this. The foods water the worms for me. So I'm gonna give them about that much because I kind of overfed them yesterday. Because I forgot to feed them over the weekend. But anyway, they're happy, they're healthy, they're thriving. And so that is the worm factory. I cover it back up with dirt or their poo, you know, because they like to be under the safety and the darkness, else they won't go. And then the next time I feed them, it's going to be in the center. So I've done this, and then the center, and we just keep going around and around and around. So that is the worm factory. And like I said, probably end of next week, this will be pretty full, that I'll be able to put another tray on top, discontinue feeding them here in order so they will finish off everything that's in here rather quickly and then start migrating up. And then I'll do the whole same process. It'll take another month or so. And then hopefully by the time the end of the school year comes, this will be completely composted and the kids will be able to use it in our gardens out behind the school. So, and then when they come back in the fall, they can harvest the fruits of their labor. So this goes back on top. This goes back on top. If you are thinking about getting this, like I said, it doesn't smell at all. You can keep it right in your kitchen. They like to be in cool, dark places, obviously, so I just keep it downstairs in the basement. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. This is called the Worm Factory 360, and it has a lot of good information on here about the things that you can feed to worms and the things that you should not feed to worms, like they don't like citrus, what temperature they prefer, and so yeah, that's that. Oh, I wanted to share one more thing with you, if you don't mind hanging in for another minute or so. I have some soil back here cooking away. I threw some boiling water, and I have this tray. Again, this is just a recycle. I did not buy this. I probably bought it 10 years ago, and I save all of these things. And I'm going to be making kitty gardens. No, not K-I-T-T-Y gardens, K-I-D-D-I-E gardens, because, again, I'm a teacher, I'm with kids all the time, and I want kids doing this kind of stuff. I think kids gardening is one of the best things that a kid could do. So inside each of these adorable little trays, there's going to be a lettuce plant, a cucumber plant, a pepper plant, a watermelon plant, a pumpkin plant, and a cherry tomato plant. And so this one little tray will allow a child, about 6 square feet is all that they would need to have their very own garden to nurture and observe and watch grow over the summer. It'll give them something to be responsible for. It'll give them something to look forward to, and then at the end, when they get to actually eat and harvest and enjoy the fruits of their labor, it's so rewarding. And so I am making these to sell. They'll probably only be like $3, and they'll be about 6 weeks old, and perfect time to get those kids out in the garden with you. Give them one 6-foot long row, or a 2x3 corner of the garden. And each of these plants, the watermelon plant and the pumpkin plant might take up a little bit more room, but usually they spread out into the lawn or whatever. But give them a little space in the garden to have for their own. I'm going to make vegetable ones and flower ones. The flower ones are going to have daisies and cosmos and sunflowers and powder puff asters, which are super fun. So, and there was, I think, another one, maybe dahlias or zinnias or something. But yeah, I am doing that for kids. I have a couple of adults who said, I want one for myself. They don't have a lot of room. So, yeah, I'm doing that. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions about the Worm Factory or my kitty gardens, let me know. Bye.